Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hey, welcome along. This is the Mark Steyn Show, and the lack of alternative persons in the room would appear to suggest that I'm Mark Steyn. Tonight, the strange contradictions of a land on permanent terrorist alert, but with permanent open borders. The end of women's sport, but possibly a huge breakthrough for women, as department store Father Christmas says. And the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict in the United States. Rush Limbaugh's right-hand man, James Golden, will be here to break that down for us. Plus, your thoughts. Email us, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Tweet us at gbnews. But first, the news with Karen.
Thank you, Mark. These are your latest headlines. Counter-terrorism police have confirmed that the bomb, which exploded outside the Liverpool Women's Hospital on Sunday, had been packed with ball bearings. They say it could have caused significant injury or death had it exploded in the way the bomber intended. Detectives are examining the possibility that the motion of the taxi stopping suddenly may have caused the improvised device to detonate prematurely. The UK is seeking to ban the group Hamas, designating it a terrorist organisation. The move, if approved by Parliament, would bring British policy in line with the EU and the US. The Home Secretary, Priti Patel, says Hamas has significant terrorist capability. That includes access to extensive and sophisticated weaponry and terrorist training facilities. Supporters of the Palestinian Islamist group could face up to 10 years in prison. A Hamas official has described the decision as biased towards Israel. Double child killer Colin Pitchfork has been arrested and recalled to prison just 2 months after his release. It's understood Pitchfork was returned to custody earlier today over a breach of his licence conditions. His re-release will be a matter for the parole board. Pitchfork was jailed for life after raping and strangling 15-year-olds Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth in Leicestershire in 1983 and 1986. US teenager Kyle Rittenhouse has been found not guilty of all charges following a shooting in Wisconsin in a trial which has divided America. Mr. Rittenhouse killed 2 white men and injured another when he opened fire during protests that rocked the town of Kenosha last year. In the last hour, the 18-year-old collapsed in court as he was acquitted of all charges after pleading self-defense in the shootings that became a flashpoint in the nation's debate over guns and vigilantism. The jury came back with its verdict after nearly 3.5 days of deliberation. COVID booster jabs have been added to the travel pass. Millions of people who've had 3 doses can now prove their status with the NHS app. It means people can visit countries where vaccinations are only valid for a certain amount of time without having to quarantine. Austria will enter a full national lockdown for at least 10 days from Monday. Unvaccinated citizens were told to stay at home last month, but Chancellor Alexander Schallenberg says nationwide restrictions are now needed to try to contain a 4th wave of COVID cases. From next autumn, schools in England will be required to help keep uniform costs down. They'll be instructed to remove unnecessary branded items under new Department for Education guidance. Schools will also have to make sure second-hand uniforms are available. That's your news update. Let's now get back to Mark Steyn.
I love my school uniform, Karen. In fact, I might do next week's show wearing it. I think I've still got it hanging in the attic somewhere. What a week. Just 11 seconds before the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, a man self-detonates at the Liverpool Women's Hospital. As is traditional, police expressed themselves baffled as to motive. They got nothing. Like the old joke about the police station where the thieves break in and steal the toilet, the police have nothing to go on. The last bit of unpleasantness, a couple of weeks back, the machete attack on David Amos. The media and the politicians were in universal agreement that it was something to do with the deterioration in our civic debate. The Speaker of the House of Commons said the quality of political discourse has to change. Why, only weeks before the machete attack, Angela Rayner had called Tory MPs scum. And apparently Ms Rayner is a person of enormous influence within the British Somali community. She's like the Ayatollah Khomeini of Somalis. They hang on her every word. And so, according to the British establishment, it's a very short distance from listening to an Angela Rayner speech to stampeding to the machete superstore before it's all sold out. By the way, that word machete, it used to be, do you remember this? It used to be that decades went by from one machete story in the domestic news to the next. Not anymore. They had a machete attack at Buckingham Palace a couple of years ago by a, quote, 26-year-old Luton man. The Queen, who has lived a long life, must occasionally reflect that once upon a time it would have been unusual to hear the word machete in relation to the entry to Buckingham Palace. Words like baldachin and porte cochere, yes, but not machete. Buy stocks. Take a tip from me. We're going into Liam Halligan territory here. Buy stocks in machetes are us, folks. They're up 312% this year. By contrast, what happened at Liverpool Women's Hospital was completely different. Allegedly a Somali-type guy on the one hand, an Iraqi-type guy on the other. Allegedly, one was an ISIS supporter, the other was a Church of England supporter. If you watch, say, the Midsummer Murders, you might have got the impression that the police look for points of commonality between different crimes. But not here. The Liverpool guy was a lone wolf. The David Amos killer is said to be a lone wolf. There's so many lone wolves, you might worry about what might happen if they were all to get together and form the amalgamated union of lone wolves. And in fact, most of these lone wolves turn out to be known wolves. That's to say, they're in the system on the anti-terrorist radar to one degree or another. But don't worry. Don't worry. They're protecting us by raising the terrorist threat level from substantial to severe. Priti Patel was talking about that in Washington earlier. That means an attack is, quote, highly likely. Ooh, scary. What kind of an attack it's likely to be, though, we can't say. It might be substantially severe. It might be severely substantial. At the same time as we are on permanent red alert for terrorism until the end of time, we have open borders. The same people who claim to be able to control a virus can't control the national frontier. You need a COVID passport to go for a week in the Greek islands, but you don't need any kind of passport if you want to wash up on the shores of England. And so because we don't have a security perimeter around the country, we have to have a security perimeter around everything inside the country. The Manchester Arena and London Bridge, where there are now bollards upon bollards. Look for more bollards outside MPs' surgeries and bollards at Liverpool Women's Hospital. Did I say invest in machetes? Buy bollards. Shares in Eurobollard are up 473% this year. Also, buy shares in Albanian Airlines, if there are any. The government assures us, I'm going to try to say this with a straight face, it requires requires immense acting skills to be able to pull this off. The government assures us that I'm starting to titter, I'll try it again. The government assures us that every single person wading ashore at Folkestone and Dover will be flown to Albania for processing at the King's Og Memorial Resort and Country Club on the outskirts of Tirana. Then, when they've completed their processing and the government of Albania has cashed the cheque for £100,000 from Her Majesty's government, then they're going to be flown back to Heathrow to start a lifetime of legal appeals while enjoying room service at the Intercontinental. Red alert with open borders. Let's try and make sense of this with filmmaker, playwright, best-selling author Phelim McAleer. Phelim covered the Troubles, the so-called Irish Troubles, for the Sunday Times and joins us now from Belgrade, like many who've spent much of their lives amid the sectarian divisions of Ireland. He likes to relax and unwind by chilling in the Balkans. In fact, he's there making a film with Loza, Lawrence Fox as Hunter Biden. Hey, how's it going? How's it going in Belgrade, Phelim?
Well, it's really home, as you say, home from home. It's very reminiscent. These people, there's a long history of warfare here. I seem to have a lot in common with the Serbians, and it's a perfect place to make a Hunter Biden movie, actually, as well, because of the dark noir absurdism.
Yeah, it is a good place to and you've got perfect casting with Lawrence Fox. Let me ask you this: the Serbs aren't jealous that the Albanians are getting all this money from the UK government to process the people who are washing up on the shores of southern England. The Serbs aren't saying, hey, we wish we'd been cut in on that deal too, are they? This seems to be the way now. The EU bribed the Turks, they want to bribe Belarus, and now Britain's bribing Albania.
No, I think that Serbia is part of that Eastern European independent group of nations where they just don't want to join the madness of the West. They're very independent. And I think you could put them in the Poland bloc and Hungary bloc, where they're kind of looking on in complete amazement. I think you've written about it before. You go into Serbia, a Serbian restaurant, and you're served by a Serbian waiter. You walk, you go to a Serbian coffee shop with the Serbian behind the counter. I was just talking to a Croatian woman there, and she was saying she was in Sweden recently, and it was all East Europeans who were serving her coffee, working in the bars, and she felt she wasn't a tourist at all. She wasn't. That Europe, globalization means that there is no countries anymore. There is no unique place.
No, I that's what I find so sad. I mean, particularly with relation to things like Ireland, I don't really see the point of 1922 or anything, because if you're in a coffee shop in Dublin, it's exactly the same as in a coffee shop in Belfast or a coffee shop in Glasgow or in London, and everybody who's serving you comes from somewhere else. We've all multiculturalism, diversity has made us all the same. But since we brought up Ireland, Phelim, let me ask you this: there was a very famously rather cynical remark. I think it was genuine on his part, by Reggie Maudling, the British Home Secretary, that they thought they could hold things down to, quote, an acceptable level of violence. When it comes to the global jihad, basically Boris and Priti Patel and everyone have figured the same thing. Yeah, these things are going to happen. We're going to hold it down to an acceptable level of violence. Every so often, your kid will go to a pop concert at the Manchester Arena and won't come home again. But it's not going to happen enough that people get mad at us to do something about it. Is that parallel between Reggie Maudling and the way governments think now valid?
Totally. They wanted to keep it in Northern Ireland. And you noticed if you went to England with bombs, very often you came back in a box or you were sent to prison for the rest of your natural life. It was about everyone knew that if you went on a bombing mission in England, you probably would be shot trying to escape. That was the deal. And it worked, and the acceptable level of violence. But Margaret Thatcher, it was brought home to her in Brighton in 1983 what that meant. And then mysteriously, suddenly there was lots of shoot to kills in Northern Ireland, regardless of what you thought about them. Margaret Thatcher realised that the acceptable level of violence, that people are unpredictable, and that it was going to be difficult to continue this. And I think with the international jihadist movement, an acceptable level of violence ain't going to cut it.
Well, and there's another difference too, isn't it? What was happening during the Troubles took place within a relatively stable population and amongst relatively small numbers. I mean, I think it was MI5 who calculated at one point that there were no more than 100 active members of the IRA. They tied down an awful lot of law enforcement with just 100 members. MI5 have already said there are actually tens of thousands of radicalized people in the United Kingdom right now, and a whole bunch are showing up to some degree or another, simply because we have no idea who these people are. Every day on the beaches of southern England, there's, this week there's been over 1,000 on one day. Nobody knows who they are. Nobody knows who the people on the Polish-Belarusian border are. So isn't it, in a sense, isn't Belfast always looked like a bit of a Sunday school picnic by comparison with any other so-called war zone. But isn't it actually right now, we just don't know what we're letting ourselves in for with the scale of this thing.
Well, don't forget, Belfast had walls too. Even small as Belfast had walls to keep people from killing each other, and still has those walls in Little Belfast, where the difference between the two communities is a Hail Mary and the Pope. That they're both Christians, and so don't forget.
Let me just ask you about that, Phelan, because it's an excellent point. I mean, you guys, in the scheme of things, you think you're fundamentally different from your neighbours. To anyone looking from like 20 miles away, they're thinking, what the hell are these guys are? They're both, there's barely a discernible difference. So we have, Protestant loyalists and Catholic Republicans. It would be absurd to think they could exist in the same territory. But apparently, if you add in, Sudanese genital mutilation practitioners and Somali warlords and all the rest of it, then you've just got multicultural diversity, and that's fine. That's going to be fine.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. We managed to try and kill each other for 30 years over the most minor differences. That's a simplification to a certain extent, but really, we watched the same TV. We almost studied the same curriculum at school. One side had more emphasis on Irish history, the other had more emphasis on British history. But really, it was so slim. The idea that you can't have a civil war and a vicious war with people who are very similar. But imagine when they're very, very, very separate. That could lead to a lot of trouble, and that is leading to a lot of trouble. And it's showing you the dark side of multiculturalism.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying a Serbian waiter in your Serbian cafe. Phelan is going to stick around and respond to what you have to say to what is going on the southern shore of a borderless kingdom. GB Views at gbnews.com. Also, the latest entry to the series, Harry Potter and the Half-Cancelled Author, all coming up on GB News in just a moment. Stay with us.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews at gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle.
Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Let's get to your reactions. James on Twitter says, our leaders are useless when it comes to terrorism. Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan said, it's simply part of living in a big city. Guess we have to just get used to it. Let's go back and ask Phelim about that. I mean, basically, that's actually worse than the acceptable level of violence, quote from the late British Home Secretary. Sadiq Khan saying this is just part of what it means to live in a big city, big global world city. You get all the benefits of vibrancy. You get all those things you don't have, you don't have there in Belgrade, like the Serbian waiters at the Serbian restaurant. Instead, you got all kinds of restaurants from all other parts of the world, and with people serving you from all other parts of the world. So you can go to a Thai restaurant and be served by somebody from Poland. There's nowhere like London for that. And just one of the prices you have to pay for all this vibrant diversity is that someone will just get blown up from time to time. And it might just be somebody's granny, and we hope it's not your granny, so you don't think about it too much. But as Sadiq Khan said, it's simply part of living in a big city. Daryl Farnsworth says, do you think there will be riots this week in Wisconsin? This is about Kyle Rittenhouse. We're going to be talking about this with James Golden toward the end of the show. He was acquitted. He was caught up in those riots in Kenosha. Now, most people in Britain have heard of the big American cities. I doubt anyone particularly has heard of Kenosha, Wisconsin, unless you're an Orson Welles fan, because he was from there. But it was in flames last summer. There was a complete breakdown of law and order by the municipal authorities and the state authorities. And so this guy, Kyle Rittenhouse, shot 2 people dead, wounded a third, and was put on trial. He was acting in self-defense. They were trying to kill him. He had his semi-automatic weapon. The other guy was trying to fire at him with a Glock. You can't second-guess that. The state can't second-guess things like that. Not when the state has abandoned the terrain. When the state's writ no longer runs. Kenosha, Wisconsin, I don't know what the equivalent would be. It's not exactly like the Cotswolds going up in flames, but let's keep it as the Cotswolds. Let's say Stow-on-the-Wold went up in flames, and the local constable just decided to sit it out, and the county constabulary, whatever cockamamie county constabulary it's called there, West Mercia, decided they were going to sit it out. Then it's every man for himself in the vacuum left by the state. So it's going to be interesting to see how people respond to that. We can't get Phelim back. He's decided to go and enjoy the splendidly non-diverse delights of Belgrade instead. I'm thinking of introducing a feature on the most boring diversity story of the week. If you have a suggestion, do let me know. I said GBviews at GBnews and then gave the wrong domain name. It's actually gbviews at gbnews.uk a minute ago. gbviews at gbnews.uk for the most boring diversity story of the week. This one put me to sleep in seconds. Some parade in North London, Hampstead Heath, is ditching Father Christmas in favour of go on, take a wild guess. Mother Christmas? Yeah, exactly. Father Christmas is one of the few remaining unifying icons in our society. He's pretty diverse, just like many of the strapping young lads arriving on the southern coast every hour. He goes by different names in different countries: Le Père Noël, Babbo Natale, the Weihnachtsmann. Pretty diverse, but not sufficiently so for our time. So he's being replaced by, well, can you guess? Trans Father Christmas, Muller Christmas, Rudolph the unvaccinated reindeer. They never let poor Rudolph join in any reindeer games, not until he gets that double jab. No, they're cancelling Father Christmas in favour of Mother Christmas. Yawn. Going so sleepy. There are multiple Mother Christmases. Apparently Santa is a polygamist, and they're going for a kind of Margaret Atwood Handmaid's Tale vibe. Take a look at this. These are all the Mother Christmas. Yeah, look at those Mother Christmas ladies. So you wear a Christmas wreath on your head and then stick candles in it and set them alight. Is that in compliance with post-EU health and safety? Going around with lighted candles on your head could all get a little incendiary if you run into a chap on his way to Liverpool Women's Hospital. Father Christmas is a woman. Superman's a bi guy. The new James Bond is a Somali asylum seeker posing as a Sudanese asylum seeker who's converted to the Church of England and is living in the room above M's garage. But do let me know if you've got a most boring diversity story of the week. Mother Christmas is certainly that. I remember as a young lad with the Independent newspaper when it started. I think the first Christmas it started, I was sent to see a production in which somebody sang "I Saw Daddy Kissing Santa Claus." It was novel back then, and it's all so boring now. Do you like, while we're on the subject, do you like women with penises? Oh, come on, you'll soon get used to them, because there won't be any other kind. If you go into the average singles bar, it's up to maybe 70-80% of women by now. Alas, J.K. Rowling persists in the old, quaint, discarded belief that a woman is someone with what the doctors now call internal genitalia. What a cis flat earther she is. So even though she created Harry Potter and made him a multi-gazillion-dollar franchise that has enriched all manner of third-rate actors, she doesn't get to go to the 20th anniversary reunion of the film series she created. Here now is Dr. Deborah So, author of the book The End of Gender. And Deborah, it's always great to see you. I wonder if perhaps you're not underselling it in your book title, that we might actually be approaching the end of women. I mean, J.K. Rowling is basically being shut out of this party because she thought that the term persons who menstruate was ridiculous. And why were we all so scared of saying the word women? Why are we all so scared of saying the word women?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Mark. It's great to see you again, as always. Definitely, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And in this particular case, I mean, J.K. Rowling is the creator of a billion-dollar empire, an extremely successful franchise. On what planet would a female creator of something that is so culturally relevant and explosive not be invited to a celebration of it? I don't think you would see that in any other case. But in this case, because trans activists are as aggressive and intimidating as they are, they've managed to basically force everyone to go along with their particular agenda. So in my book's title, The End of Gender, refers to our lack of understanding of gender due to science denial and the fact that we can't speak openly about the basic facts like men and women being biologically different, that biology does play a role and that it's important. that if someone is attracted to women, they may not want to necessarily have sex with a woman with a penis, and that should be totally okay, and that should not be seen as hateful or transphobic. And I really think it's unfortunate, because if everyone who was not on board with this said so vocally, I think it would be much more clear that this is not acceptable. But people are understandably afraid. And to see this happening to such a powerful woman, I think most people say, well, if she's not safe from this, what chance do I have in speaking up and keeping my job and not being destroyed by these activists?
Well, you talked about the science there. I had a conversation on telly a year or two back with a trans athlete. That's to say a trans gender woman who competed in various sporting events, and she was talking about, oh, don't worry, it's all completely fair. We make sure we lower our levels of testosterone, so it's all a completely fair when we're competing against biological ladies. The Olympic Committee has just said, never mind, we're not bothering with all that testosterone stuff. It's far too difficult to maintain. Basically, women's sports were created because otherwise it would be very rare for simply because of their different physical strengths, for a woman to beat a man in certain sports. I mean, I'd lose to Martina Navratilova at tennis, but that's because I'm not very good and I sleep in till 11 and then have a couple of cheeseburgers, and Martina takes it more seriously. But generally speaking, women's sports were created so that there would be a space for women to compete without the men having the basic physical advantage. And now the Olympics have said, oh, no, we don't care about that anymore. So basically, there's going to be male sports and transgender sports, aren't there?
When I saw the new guidelines, I honestly thought it was a joke. I went through them and I said, where's the section that's going to talk about what sort of initiatives need to be held so that there will be a fair playing ground? So kudos to the trans activists again for managing to intimidate even the Olympics into going along with this, because I know that the Olympics have been going back and forth trying to make a decision about this for the last couple of years, because it is such a hotly contested political issue, and they want to, I think my sense was, to take into account the concerns of trans activists, but also to have some basis of meritocracy for female athletes, because as you said, there are clear advantages, although I believe the guideline says that there are no clear advantages, but there are, if you look at the science, clear advantages in terms of male athletes, those born male who have undergone male puberty, even if they have taken hormonal suppression, so they're suppressing testosterone and taking estrogen, that does not override the advantages that come along with being larger, stronger, faster, having greater muscle mass. I talk about all the science in The End of Gender. And so, I mean, it's been left up to the individual sports to make a decision about how they want to present these requirements, if any requirements are being made. But I think if the top highest level organization is saying that there are no differences, I mean, what are others more individual sports going to do? I mean, they're not going to. I don't think they're not going to want to deal with the backlash. And in some ways, I don't blame them. These activists are extremely aggressive, but I really feel for the female athletes, because it's not fair for them.
Well, when you say they're not willing to deal with the backlash, we've had J.K. Rowling is one of the wealthiest women on the planet, but in the end, you know, she's feeling lonelier day by day because, you know, people at her publishing house don't want to talk to her. People, Warner Brothers, who make the movies, don't want to talk to her, as we've just seen. Similar thing in Canada, where Margaret Atwood, the Handmaid's Tale lady we mentioned earlier, she's been taking some heat for this too. It's incredible to me that you have to be at that level even to withstand it. Everyone else just bows meekly and submits, including corporations and all the rest. And you have to really be at the J.K. Rowling, Margaret Atwood level to be even successful enough now, You've got to belong to the most select group of women, among the wealthiest women on the planet, among the most successful and prominent women on the planet, even to be able to make a show at standing up for women.
It's absolutely insane. And when you look at the harassment that those women have to deal with constantly, the things that they are being called on social media, the opportunities that are being denied to them now, I think you have to, when you speak out about this issue, I mean, I can only speak from my own experience, you have to be completely unapologetic and know exactly what you're getting into, and know that this is going to put you on the other side of quote unquote history, I guess, on the quote unquote wrong side of history. But what happens is otherwise the activists see that you are willing to capitulate, that organizations and your colleagues are willing to capitulate if they are willing to shun you for speaking the truth. It really has to be, it's a big sacrifice, I would say, that's being made when these women do choose to speak out, and we should support them.
I get the feeling this is all moving very fast. Much faster than we think. I sometimes worry that books like yours won't even be able to be published in a year or two. There have been other books that have been banned from Amazon and banned in Barnes and Noble and all the rest of it. And yet it seems there's no real groundswell of public support for this. This is just something that is being imposed from top down. It's by the elites down, and it's the abolition of biological sex. It has huge implications. It's far more important than any other political topic. There's no great popular movement from it. It's a top-down revolution against the masses in certain respects.
Yeah, I don't know how the public has been. I mean, I don't think most people are okay with this, but when you look at, as you mentioned, corporations, you look at mainstream media, it's completely been captured by gender ideology. And with my book in particular, I question even if I would be able to write that book today. I mean, it came out a year ago. There have been numerous attempts. In one case, one very large retailer has permanently banned my book. I hear from people all over the world telling me that they go to their local bookstore.
Which retailer banned it, Deborah?
If you go to National Review's website, they did an investigation. You can say, Mark. I'm not sure that I want to say which one it was, but if it's on my website, people can look it up. And National Review did an investigation and found out.
I understand that, but we will find out and we will mention it because these people deserve to take. They need to understand, which they don't, is that there's two sides. At the moment, the pressure comes from one side and there's very little pushback from the other. But this is the biggest change of our time. If the abolition of biological sex just rampages on at the rate it's going, Deborah. Thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure. And you are one. I hope you're making as much money from your book as J.K. Rowling makes from hers, because you are one of the few who is standing up to this. And there will be great implications, not just for feminism, but for female identity at its most fundamental, if this continues. Thank you very much, Deborah So. Always a pleasure, Deborah. Coming up, James Golden from America's Rush Limbaugh show on a truly terrifying week for the laughingly misnamed U.S. justice system, ending in an acquittal for Kyle Rittenhouse. Also, your chance to stump the Steyn. Ask me anything at all. Give it your best shot. GBViews at GBnews.uk. We'll be back in just a moment.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
GBviews at GBnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. In a lame imitation of Barrage the Farage, we have Stump the Steyn. Shoot me a question, whatever's on your mind, gbviews@gbnews.uk. And before we go to our guest, here is the latest on the Kyle Rittenhouse trial over in Wisconsin from Alice Porter.
It sounds like something from a Western movie. An armed teenager travelling to a city to allegedly protect it from rioters and shooting 3 people. But that's exactly what happened in August of last year.
And all around here, guys, every building around here has been broken into, looted.
Local officials had declared a state of emergency in the city of Kenosha amid mass protests after a white police officer shot Jacob Blake, a black man. It came just 3 months after a national outcry over the murder of George Floyd. Mr. Rittenhouse, who was 17 at the time, travelled from his home in Illinois carrying a semi-automatic rifle and opened fire on the streets of Kenosha, killing 2 white men and injuring a 3rd.
The shot that killed Mr. Rosenbaum was a shot to the back. The evidence will show that the defendant fled the scene of the dead body of Joseph Rosenbaum without stopping to offer any aid whatsoever.
But Mr. Rittenhouse pleaded not guilty to all charges. He portrayed himself as someone who wanted to protect people and property in the midst of chaos. Mr. Rittenhouse was emotional as he successfully argued that he was the one who was ambushed by several men and acted in self-defense.
That's right, run.
The court also heard from the 3rd man, whom Mr. Rittenhouse had shot and injured.
So after you raised your hands like this, you saw the defendant re-rack the weapon?
Correct.
What did you think was going to happen?
So then by re-racking the weapon, I inferred that the defendant wasn't accepting my surrender.
Did you feel that he was going to point the gun and shoot at you again?
Yes.
This case has rested on whether Mr. Rittenhouse was the instigator in a night of bloodshed in Kenosha, or a concerned citizen who came under attack while trying to protect property.
Kyle shot Joseph Rosenbaum to stop a threat to his person. And I'm glad he shot him, because if Joseph Rosenbaum had got that gun, I don't for a minute believe he wouldn't have used it against somebody else. He was irrational and crazy.
The debate surrounding this trial has made its way to the highest levels of US politics. Conservatives embrace Mr. Rittenhouse as a patriot who defended US civil liberties. For liberals, he's the face of a gun culture which is out of control. 500 Army reservists have been placed on standby, and the state governor is calling for peace as today's verdict saw angry scenes outside the courthouse. In a country which prides itself on citizens having the right to defend themselves, Kyle Rittenhouse's case has raised fundamental questions about how far those liberties can extend. Alice Porter, GB News.
Well, James Golden is known to tens of millions of Americans as Bo Snerdley, right-hand man to the late Rush Limbaugh. He's a book on Rush out next week, and he has his own show on the legendary New York station WABC. It is always good to see you, James. Has the rioting begun? There've been threats to go to the judge's house and hang him, and various threats against the jurors too. There've been people tailing the van that takes the jurors away, or is it all staying calm for the moment?
At the moment, things are calm. It's so good to be here, Mark. So good to be with you across the pond here. Yes, it is stable at the moment. We only can imagine what will or could happen tonight. I issued a warning on social media, dear Kenosha, if you're thinking about rioting tonight, make sure that the person you chase does not have a rifle or a weapon to defend himself with, because if that's the case, history has now proven it may not end well for you. And that is exactly what happened in this case. Kyle Rittenhouse defended himself.
Yeah.
He was smacked on the head with a skateboard. Mark, he was thrown to the ground. Those shots were fired with him looking up from the ground, chased by multiple people who would have no doubt either seriously maimed or killed him that night. And he defended himself, and as such, the jury in this case found that he acted in self-defense and he was acquitted.
What is disturbing about this, and I agree with you on that, I don't think anyone, if you're on the ground and someone's walloping a skateboard into your head, you're under no obligation to lie back there and take it on the assumption that walloping you with the skateboard is the beginning and end of his plans for you. But this was clearly a politically motivated prosecution. They basically wanted to teach this guy a lesson that Antifa and BLM are the left's enforcers on the streets of America, and you don't go up against them, and you don't take them out. If it's a civil war, it's going to be a one-sided civil war. They get people like Kevin Spacey and Kamala Harris staffers paying their bail when they get picked up by the cops, and they get let out and they're never charged. Whereas this guy, he's on the other side, he's got no celebrities itching to bail him out, and they want to make an example of him.
And yes, and they wanted to make an example of him. There was another case where two homeowners came out. They lived in a gated community. BLM protesters violated and were trespassing and threatening property destruction. These two homeowners came out and they were armed, and the homeowners ended up being arrested. So exactly right. It's the same message you get from the left all the time. Now, Mark, I've come under a little bit of attack from a view that, because I also question Kyle Rittenhouse on this. You're 17 years old, for goodness sake. I can't imagine my mom, when I was 17, saying, oh, son, that's a great idea. You're 17. Just go out and join the riot and try to protect everyone. He's 17 years old, for goodness sakes. He should have been home doing his homework. That said, he had every right to defend himself.
No, I agree with you that. And I think, well, my view, I'm not a particular, I support the Second Amendment, the right to gun ownership that Americans enjoy and most other Western nations no longer do. But I'm not particularly into guns. But last summer in America, simply because all kinds of small towns were suddenly dangerous, small Vermont and New Hampshire towns suddenly had menacing homeless encampments and all the rest of it, I started driving around with a Glock in my glove box, not because I wanted to, but just because it's dangerous, and the police are doing an awful lot of just standing around in this situation while their cities burn.
Yeah, or they're under threat of being defunded from the left, who seems to think that you can just send social workers out to do the job of police and intervening in violent disputes or deadly disputes, which absolutely makes no sense whatsoever. We watched American cities burn under the leadership of leftist governors who elected not to send in law enforcement, who elected to let the likes of Antifa and Black Lives Matter protesters have the run of the day, destroy not only federal government buildings, but vandalized local businesses. Arson was all over these American cities like Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington, and yes, Kenosha. While governors in these are what we call blue states here in America. They are run by Democrats and liberals, while the governors just sat on their hands, almost like Emperor Nero, and just, oh, we'll just do something else while our cities burn right underneath our noses. It was unconscionable.
What do you think? There's a difference, I think, between the American left, the Democrat Party, and those in other parts of the West. Monsieur Macron in France, who's certainly not, my preferred taste in politicians, but they attempted to do the George Floyd thing over there. And he said on, I think, the second or third night, he stood up, he said, we are not going to change the name of a single street, and we are not going to take down a single statue because they're all part of the glorious history of France. And the whole problem went away. Here, in the case of not just Kyle Rittenhouse, but beyond that, the American left, the Democrat, mainstream figures in the Democrat Party, like Nancy Pelosi, seem to be encouraging the torching of American cities.
The American left, unlike the left, I'm so glad you brought that up, in other Western nations, the American left despises their own country. Other leftists may take issue with particular issues, and they may come to the street on an issue-oriented basis. But they love their countries and they are patriotic in their own countries. The American left, unlike any of these other nations, doesn't like their own country. They hate the country they're living in and they're too cowardly to go move somewhere else. So we're stuck with them here. They want to loot, they want to commit arson, they want to destroy the cities that they live in, and then they want to come to the federal government and taxpayers and ask for money so that they can try to rebuild the very cities that they've destroyed. It makes zero sense.
While you're on that subject, James, years ago I had a conversation with Kevin Rudd, the Labour Prime Minister of Australia, and he was very anxious to assure me as I entered the room. He said, I'm part of the pro-American left. And I said, crikey, I don't think in America they have a pro-American left, but they do in Australia. It's a very interesting distinction, that.
Exactly right.
Do you think Kyle Rittenhouse is out of this now, or are they? Because the other thing is you've got all these different levels of jurisdiction. You know, in most countries, the criminal courts belong to one level of government, whether it's at the national or the provincial level. In America, they're all saying, OK, well, now this trial has been held in Kenosha. Now the feds are going to try him all over again. The old double jeopardy, triple jeopardy. Will find a different level of government to take him to court until his life is totally ruined.
Normally, Mark, in a verdict like this, where all the charges have been found in favor of the defendant, I would say no, there wouldn't be an attempt. But this federal government, our Department of Justice, is under the direction of a gentleman named Merrick Garland, who is, despite what we were told when they were trying to nominate him to the Supreme Court, there were stories about what a moderate he was. He is a radical leftist. So if he wants to appease the left, one of the things he can certainly do is run back and say, well, we're going to bring Mr. Rittenhouse up on civil rights charges because the civil rights of the men who were killed while trying to kill him were violated. And that's certainly an option. It would be unwise because we are approaching a midterm election year where every single member of the House of Representatives in our country is up for election. Joe Biden's numbers are in the toilet and circling as low as they can get. There is no reason or rhyme for Democrats to believe that they will be successful in the midterm elections. And prosecuting this Kyle Rittenhouse once again might only be a move that would hurt them even further in the eyes of the electorate.
Well, that's an interesting political calculation. Our mutual friend Conrad Black, when he attracted the attention of the Department of Justice, I told him to climb in the back of my pickup truck. I'd throw a tarp over him, drive him across the Canadian border and over to Newfoundland and get a ferry to the Turks and Caicos Islands and a jet to freedom. And I now make that offer more generally to anyone, because I didn't realize quite as I did by then, that the whole dirty, stinking, rotten, corrupt federal Department of Justice needs a complete top-to-toe overhaul. Thank you so much, James. Congratulations on the book. If you're interested in it, it is out on Monday. He knows the late Rush Limbaugh like nobody does. Rush on the radio, and there's even a little bit with me in there. That's how good that book is. Thank you, James Golden. Time for your emails and tweets. Let's do a couple of Stump the Steyn things. This is from Alice. Do you prefer the First Amendment, or would you rather the UK's laws on speech? In the end, it's way beyond that now. First Amendment in America, England used to be the crucible of liberty when it came to freedom of speech. But we have lost what really matters, which is the broad culture of freedom of speech. So it's beyond law. You have to exercise your right to free speech in every moment of your daily life. Otherwise, they're going to take it away from you. But certainly nobody should want the system here. Daniel says, what did you think of the late Christopher Hitchens' review of your book? This was my book, America Alone. And Christopher Hitchens gave it a favourable review while purporting to discern all these interesting distinctions between Muslim communities in different parts of Europe. And as I always say, it doesn't really matter in the end. It all trends in the same direction. But I was certainly very grateful to the late Mr. Hitchens. That is going to do it for the Mark Steyn Show for this Friday. Do have a spiffy weekend. Stay safe, stay free. What a thrill to be the warm-up act for the fabulous Alistair Stewart after the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. A change in wind direction and a change in weather during the next 24 hours. Mild at first, rain then sinks south. That's associated with a cold front, so colder, brighter weather follows. But the cold front lingering for a time overnight across northern Scotland, bringing some persistent rain here before it finally pushes south across the country through Saturday and Saturday night. And then we open the door to northerlies, much colder but brighter weather following for Sunday itself. Nevertheless, the mild air remains for Friday night. A lot of cloud cover, some breaks in the east, but generally it's cloudy skies and persistent rain there for northern Scotland, pepping up a little bit, I think, during the early hours. A mild night to come once again, perhaps not as mild as it has been, but temperatures still above average for the time of year as we start off the weekend. A lot of cloud in the sky, the cloud thick enough to give some light outbreaks of rain in the west and the south, some hill fog. A wet start though for northern Scotland. That rain then moves through Northern Ireland, central and southern Scotland during the late morning, pushing into northern England and North Wales by the afternoon. Mild in the south, colder air follows in the north with some blustery showers, and it's cold enough for some snow over the hills of Scotland in this airflow. But as the, cloud and those outbreaks of rain sink south on Saturday night, that cold air floods south for all of us. And so by the start of Sunday, those temperatures are much lower than they have been during recent mornings. We're looking at a touch of frost for some sheltered spots across the northern half of the UK. But there'll be plenty of brightness in the sky to compensate. Blue skies for many. There will be an area of clouds sinking south into central and southern parts of the UK, and there'll be showers pushing into eastern, northern and some southwestern coasts. But away from those showers, in the sunshine, perfectly pleasant, if a little colder than it has been recently. Plenty of bright weather on Monday, cloudier on Tuesday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.